Have you ever had that feeling, maybe, first thing in the morning or right when you're trying to sleep, where your mind just, it will not shut up?
Oh, yes.
It's not just noise, it's this constant, relentless internal voice that's criticizing, worrying, inventing the absolute worst case scenario for everything. It's
Yeah.
it's exhausting.
That is the perfect way to describe it. Mental exhaustion.
Mm.
For so many people, that internal monologue becomes a kind of prison.
The prison, yeah.
It feels bigger than just having bad thoughts. It feels like, a fundamental flaw in who they are.
And that feeling of being trapped is exactly what we are diving into today. Our mission is clear. We're going to dissect the negative thinking cycle,
Right.
what it is mechanically, how it hijacks your brain, and most importantly, the clear, actionable techniques from therapeutic insights that let you interrupt it and regain some control.
We're using a fascinating stack of sources today that treat negative thinking not as a moral failing or a mood, but as a system problem.
A system problem. I like that.
Yeah. If we can understand the mechanical structure of the loop, we can start to engineer our way out of it.
I really appreciate that focus on the mechanical. So, okay, let's unpack this. Why is it a cycle? What is the anatomy of this thing, and why does it involve the body so much?
It's a cycle because the mind and body are constantly feeding each other. When you're caught in this pattern, you don't just register an emotion like anxiety or guilt, you feel a physical reaction first.
Like your chest tightening up.
Exactly. The chest tightens, breathing gets shallow, your shoulders tense up. Maybe there's that sinking feeling in your stomach.
So your body is already preparing for a threat. It's signaling danger.
Precisely. And that physical tension, it confirms to the mind that the negative thought must be true. It reinforces the whole loop. And the thoughts themselves, they follow a predictable three-step pattern every single time.
Making the grooves in the record deeper.
Deeper and deeper.
Okay, so walk us through those 3 steps so we can, spot them when they hit us.
So step one is the trigger. And this can be anything. It could be a major life event like a big presentation at work, or it could be something tiny. An old song comes on, or you send an email and the reply takes longer than 3 minutes.
Right, that's the starting gun. And step 2 is the analysis, but a really skewed analysis, I'm guessing.
Completely skewed. Step two is interpretation. The brain processes that trigger through a pre-existing filter. And that filter is almost never objective. It's usually built from deep-seated insecurity or past trauma, fear of failure, all that old stuff.
So you're not seeing the situation as it is. You're seeing your worst fear confirmed by it.
Yes. Which brings us to step three, the reaction. And this just slams you back into the physical discomfort, the emotional plunge, and, crucially, a whole cascade of more negative thoughts that validate the first one.
That's the spiral effect. It's insidious.
It really is. Once that negative thought takes hold, the brain stops trying to find a balanced view. Instead, it actively tries to find more evidence to support the negative thought.
It's like a highly aggressive, biased lawyer.
That's a perfect analogy. A lawyer who is only collecting evidence for the prosecution and completely ignores anything positive or contradictory. One thought opens the door, and suddenly the whole room is flooded.
Which explains the mental fatigue. I mean, you're fighting a courtroom battle where your own defense attorney is missing.
Right.
So if we recognize this, the immediate human response is to fight it, to tell ourselves, stop worrying, be positive.
And this is probably the most critical counterintuitive truth we need to get. Fighting negative thoughts makes them stronger. It guarantees they stick around.
But why? I mean, if I tell myself I need to stop thinking about failing, shouldn't that focus help me push it away?
The mind just doesn't respond well to force. If I told you right now for the next 60 seconds, you have to obsessively focus on not imagining a giant rubber duck wearing a tiny crown.
I see the duck, I see the crown, the whole thing.
Exactly. When you try to force a thought out, your brain has to focus on it intensely just to identify it as the thing to suppress. You're trying to help, but the act of force guarantees it fails.
And this feeds into the deeper problem of our internal narrative, which, doesn't always reflect reality. I remember that example from our sources. Someone loses a job, internalizes the script, I wasn't capable.
Right.
And even when they get a new, better job, that old voice is still on repeat, making them feel like an imposter.
That's a classic failure of internal narrative management. The external world changed for the better, but the internal filter, that ingrained belief, it didn't automatically update. It takes conscious work to update that software.
So if fighting them fails and the narrative is stuck on repeat, is this just a fundamental flaw in us? Why do we default to dread even when things are okay?
That brings us to the biological root, and honestly, this provides a lot of relief for people. The negativity bias. You aren't faulty. Your brain is just running old, outdated software.
So this was helpful, what, 50,000 years ago when scanning the bushes for a lion meant life or death?
That's it. Our ancestors survived by prioritizing danger, focusing on mistakes, and scanning for threats. A mistake registered way deeper than a success. And in modern life, that old tool misinterprets a small setback at work as a life-threatening failure.
So understanding that means you can stop feeling like you're somehow brooding.
Yes, it's just faulty programming.
That completely reframes the challenge. The goal isn't to destroy the thought because our brain won't let us. It's to shift from fighting it to understanding, detachment, and replacement.
Exactly. You have to remember, a negative thought feels true, but it is not a fact.
Okay, so it's time to get tactical. We need methods to create that crucial distance. Let's get into the 7 core techniques from the sources that let us step outside that thought process.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start with technique 1, which is all about creating that distance.
Technique 1 is the thought externalization method. When that critical thought pops up, let's say it's, everyone at this meeting thinks I'm unprepared. You immediately visualize it. Picture it as a sentence written on a screen, external to you.
So it's not in you, it's over there.
It's over there, maybe it's across the room or on the back of a bus driving away. It is not your voice. It is just a floating statement.
The visualization helps, but you need a verbal cue too, right, to really cement that distance.
You do. And the cue is a simple, firm mantra. This is just a thought, not a fact. This is how you weaken its grip. You're turning it from an undeniable truth inside you to just a spontaneous electrical impulse that you're observing.
Passive observation, not active wrestling. I like that. So technique 2 takes that distance and then forces the brain in a new direction.
Right. Technique 2 is the what if I'm wrong question. This is a form of cognitive restructuring, and it's essential for interrupting those catastrophic predictions like, I'll never get ahead, or this tiny mistake means I'm ruined.
But for someone who feels totally convinced their worst case scenario is coming, just saying be positive it's meaningless.
It is. The goal is not delusional fantasy. It's to ask crucial counter-questions that introduce realistic possibilities. You ask, what if my brain, which I know is wired for negativity, is simply wrong about this?
Or even, what if the opposite is true?
Exactly. You're forcing your brain, that prosecution lawyer, to look at the defense's argument. You're demanding evidence for balance, not just confirmation of fear.
Technique 3 is about labeling the opponent, giving it a name. It sounds simple, but it's really powerful.
It is. This is the pattern labeling technique. It's critical because if you can name the distortion, you can control it. You categorize the thought. Is this catastrophizing?
Assuming one tiny error means total ruin.
Right. Or is it overgeneralization? I failed once, so I always fail. Or emotional reasoning. I feel like it's true, so it must be true.
So instead of being paralyzed by the feeling of failure, I can step back and say, wait, this is my brain, filtering out the positive. I succeeded on 10 tasks, but I'm obsessing over the one mistake.
Precisely. That small step of labeling creates immediate distance. It reminds you this isn't reality. It's just a cognitive habit your brain fell into. The thought loses its authority the second you categorize it.
Okay, let's pivot back to the physical side we talked about. Technique 4 addresses the body first.
Yes, technique 4 is the body reset. Since negative thoughts immediately trigger shallow breathing and muscle tension, you have to address the physical state first.
Because a calm body can't really sustain a panicked thought.
It's very hard for it to.
Yeah.
Your brain can't maintain a high alert state if the body is actively signaled to calm down. The structured deep breath is key. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. That longer exhale is a physiological cue that tells your ancient survival brain that you're safe.
You're breaking the feedback loop on the physical side. Now, technique 5, this is where the deeper work starts. The narrative rewrite.
It is. Negative thoughts almost always come from an old script. Something learned when you were younger and more vulnerable. The voice of a hypercritical teacher, a demanding parent, and early rejection.
So how do you even begin to identify the source of that critical script? That sounds really hard.
It takes patience. You have to ask yourself, whose voice is that really? Where did I first learn that I had to be perfect to be worthy? Often that I'm not good enough. Voice isn't you as an adult, it's an echo.
And once you identify it, what's the action step?
The action is to intervene with kindness. You speak directly to the younger self who learned to doubt. You start to heal by consciously rewriting that internal script, replacing the criticism with compassion. Things like, you don't have to be perfect. You were just a child and you were doing your best, Nick.
It's self-compassion as active therapy.
It really is.
Okay, technique 6 is crucial because it goes completely against the instinct of avoidance that anxiety loves. It's the opposite action method.
Yes. When the negative thought tells you to withdraw, isolate, or avoid something, you do the opposite. If your brain says, don't go to that party, you'll be awkward. You put your coat on and you go, even if it's just for 20 minutes.
If it says, you'll fail if you try to learn this new skill, you start the lesson anyway.
You start the lesson. Action rewires the brain faster than thought alone. Successfully doing something, even imperfectly, gives you immediate, undeniable evidence against the negative prediction. You prove the thought wrong just by doing the thing.
And finally, technique 7, which ties all this together. The daily mental hygiene routine.
Just like brushing your teeth. This can't be something you only do when you're already spiraling. It has to be maintenance.
So what's the routine?
It's simple, structured, and non-negotiable. 1. Write down 3 negative thoughts from the day. 2. Label them catastrophizing, emotional reasoning, etc. 3. Challenge them using the what if I'm wrong tool. And 4. Replace them with balanced, realistic alternatives.
So consistent practice slowly turns your brain from an enemy into an ally.
That's the goal. Over time, it becomes an ally.
So after laying all this out, what does this mean for the listener who's living inside that storm? If you've been feeling defeated by your own thoughts, just remember this. You are not powerless, and you are not broken.
Your mind is following a predictable mechanical pattern. It's rooted in old survival programming, and patterns can change. The key takeaway here is repetition, not perfection. You will slip up. You'll fall back into old thoughts. That's not a failure.
It's just a data point.
It's a data point. The practice is just returning to these techniques every time you realize that old script is playing.
And as the sources suggest, these thoughts lose their power as you build a stronger sense of self and self-esteem. That's the deeper work. But these 7 techniques are how you build that foundation.
Ultimately, the goal is to stop treating your mind like an enemy you need to conquer, and instead to treat it with kindness and patience, like a friend who's just running some really faulty old software.
So given the persistence of that negativity bias, that biological need to find threats, what is one small, non-negotiable action you can commit to taking today from these 7 techniques to prove to your brain that self-compassion and safety are just as vital as threat detection? Try one. Interrupt the cycle before it even starts the spiral.